Chicago, it's time to act. The Boeing company is a major sponsor of many philanthropical efforts. And this month, the month of August, Boeing is a major sponsor of the Air and Water Show. We want them out of the Air and Water Show. We want them dropped by the city of Chicago, of sponsors of that. That show is designed for family entertainment. It is not designed to glorify the murderous actions of American corporations that provide the weapons that Israel uses for the slaughter that's going on of civilians, women, and children, and disabled people. We want Chicago to send a statement to Washington and to Tel Aviv and to 100 North Riverside Drive that the city of Chicago stands with the people of Gaza. Thank you. My last name is spelled I-O-S-B-A-K-E-R. You want to spell it I-S-O-B-A-K-E-R, but that would be wrong. I-O-S-B-A-K-E-R. Sorry. Joe. Thank you. Our next speaker is Hatem Aboudeya, and I'll let him spell that, from the U.S. Palestinian Community Network. Hatem has been one of the MCs of all of the major marches for Gaza, not just in this war, but in the war in 2012, in the war in 2008, in the protests during the Intifada a decade ago, and he is going to speak about Boeing as well. Hatem.
Hatem Aboudeya, H-A-T-E-M, last name A-B-U-D-A-Y-Y-E-H. A-B-U-D-A-Y-Y-E-H. I represent the Chicago Coalition for Justice in Palestine. Last night, another 108 Palestinians in Gaza, mostly civilians, were killed by airstrikes from the Israeli military. Today, the Palestinians in Gaza lost their last electrical plant. They have no electricity for pumping water, for the sewage system, for the hospitals. In the past 3 weeks, the death toll is over 1,200 and over 7,000 have been seriously wounded. 20% of the killed are children. The headlines overnight are that Israel is stepping up its airstrikes. And what planes and missiles and bombs are being dropped? They're made by Boeing Corporation, whose headquarters is here in Chicago. We're here today because Boeing is one of the masters of war, the second largest arms manufacturer in the US. Boeing wants people to think well of them, so they spend lavishly on philanthropic and public relations. They are a major sponsor of Chicago's annual Air and Water Show, scheduled for August 16th and 17th. But the Air and Water Show doesn't want people watching to see images of the dead. Those of us who love Palestine, who love humanity, cannot move away. We can't turn away from those images. Every day we see faces of the dead, killed by Israel with the complicity of our government and of Boeing. So we demand of Chicago officials, drop Boeing from the Air and Water Show. No company that makes profit from the slaughter of civilians should be included in city events and programming. Some people argue that it's not Boeing that kills people, they just make the jets. But Boeing knows what the jets are used for. Boeing makes these weapons for use in the attacks on Gaza. Boeing also has sold Israel thousands of tail kits designed to make dumb bombs into smart bombs, improving accuracy. More recently, Boeing designed a laser seeker to add to the nose of a bomb equipped with their tail kit, giving it the ability to engage moving targets. And Boeing has provided at least 60 of the Apache attack helicopters to Israel, as well as the first payloads of pinpoint accurate Hellfire missiles. Israel targets hospitals, schools, and children, as we've seen in Palestine and in Gaza, with weapons that are marketed based on their accuracy. So civilian deaths are not collateral damage. The killing of women, men, and children is deliberate, and Boeing makes it possible. We call for the Air and Water Show to dump Boeing, and we call for an end to the war on the Palestinian people. Thank you.
Well, I hope the fact that the city of Chicago just took their emblem off of this podium is not an indication of the response we're going to be getting from the city of Chicago. Our next speaker is Ashley Borer. In these recent weeks, all over the United States, Jewish people who do not want their religion and their people to be identified with the murderous regime in Tel Aviv have stepped up in protest. And I'm proud to introduce Ashley Borer from Jews for Justice in Palestine.
It's a harrowing morning to address you all. As Hatem said, over 100 people were killed in an airstrike last night in Gaza, and I am here as a representative of Jews for Justice in Palestine, a Chicago-based collective, to say that we refuse to allow these attacks to be carried out in our name. We refuse to allow them to be carried out in our name as Jews. We refuse to allow them to be carried out in our name as Americans, when the United States contributes $3 billion a year in aid to a murderous apartheid regime in Southwest Asia. And we refuse as Chicagoans to allow our city programming to stand as a platform to shine a light on a corporation that makes profits off of war, death, and occupation. We have a wonderful history in Chicago of standing on the right side of history. This is the city in which the 8-hour working day was won. And unfortunately, we also live in a city of grave injustices. And what we are asking today is for the City Council to stand on the right side of history, to stand on the side of justice, to stand against the indiscriminate murder of civilians, of women, of children, of non-combatants. It is unconscionable for our tax dollars and for our city to continue to support a campaign of terror, death, and destruction. What we've seen over the last few weeks is a crest of Jewish anti-Zionist activism. Jews across the globe in every major city saying that these campaigns, that this death, that this slaughter can no longer masquerade as protection for Jews either in Israel or abroad. We who take up the mantle, the history of Judaism, we who proudly identify as Jews for social justice, we who live in this city demand that Boeing no longer be allowed to co-sponsor the Air and Water Show, and we demand further that the city of Chicago and that the citizens of Chicago stand in solidarity with the people of Palestine and those who are continuing to be killed, slaughtered, harassed, maimed, and brutalized in Gaza. We stand in solidarity with the people of Palestine. I do so not only as a Jew, not only as an American citizen, not only as a Chicago resident, but as a human being who works for social justice and liberation the world over. Spelling, sorry. My name is Ashley Borer, A-S-H-L-E-Y, last name B as in boy, O-H-R-E-R.
Thank you. Our last speaker is Father Bob Bossi, who's speaking for the Coalition to Shut Down Guantanamo. Bob?
Thank you. Good morning, everybody. In 1991, my brother Paul organized the first of many protests of Chicago's Air and Water Show. He did so because he knew that the 2 million people who came there each year were looking for family entertainment were being subjected to a military commercial with 3 goals. The first of which was to recruit our young people to become killers. The second goal was to promote support for huge military budgets, a great portion of which goes to corporations such as Boeing. And the third goal of the Air and Water Show is to foster support, thank you, is to foster support for wars around the world. Boeing Corporation, with headquarters here in Chicago, and actually the second largest weapons maker in the world, knows only too well these goals of the Air and Water Show, and is most glad to be a sponsor because it supports their bottom line through their weapons sales. In 2012 alone, Boeing received from the U.S. government, our tax dollars, $27.6 billion for weapons sales. We know, and Boeing knows, and the leaders of our government know, that Boeing's weapons rain down death and destruction on our sisters and brothers worldwide and destroy the very environment that supports us all. Today, this is especially true in Gaza, where over 1,000 Palestinians have been killed and thousands injured by, among other weapons, those of Boeing's weapons supplied to Israel and used by Israel to foster U.S. interests. While we, the coalition to shut down Guantanamo, oppose the Air and Water Show as a whole as a propaganda tool of death, today specifically, we call upon the City Council to rescind Boeing's sponsorship of this military commercial. This is the least they can do to say no to the carnage in Gaza and to pay homage in a small way to the innocent men, women, and children there who have been killed and maimed by Boeing's weapons. Boeing is not a sponsor to be proud of. Thank you.
We'll take any questions now, if anybody has any. All right.
If there's no questions, we want to thank the press, and we want to show you just a little graphic of what it looks like in schoolyards and in United Nations buildings and in hospitals and in homes